Namaste Sanskritpriyaः. Vayam idanim asmakam Sanskritadhyayanasya antime saptahe smaha. So, Namaste dear friends, and we are in the last week of our study of Sanskrit. Asmin saptahe aham yushman aupacharika ritya sandhim pathayishyami. So, I am going to be teaching you the sandhi forms in a formal manner. We've already been looking at them, but I would like to take the opportunity to present them to you in a formal, structured manner. Anantaram vayam asmakam pathyakramasya sankshepena punasmaranam karishyamaha. Following that, we will do a brief overview of the course content that we've been looking at. So, in today's lecture, which is lecture number 42, I'll do an introduction to the svarasandhi, or the sandhi which is pertaining to the vowels. So, I'll be introducing you to the svarasandhi, which in English is the English equivalent is the morphophonology, which means that when you have two words side by side, the last phoneme of the first word and the first phoneme of the second word, these two sounds combine with each other and sometimes form a completely new phoneme, and so which is known as the sandhi in Sanskrit. Now, sometimes they don't necessarily need to change either, but there is a kind of a relationship between them. So, we are going to be focusing on the svarasandhi, which means it's the sandhi based on the two sounds which are vowels, and the other kinds of sandhis are the visarga sandhi, where the visarga means the aspirate sound. So, the last sound is the visarga, followed by different combinations as phonemes of the next word. Besides this, we will also look at the vyanjana sandhi, or the sandhi pertaining to consonants. So, the last sound being a consonant and the first can be again anything else, and we'll see how they relate to each other when we pronounce them. Besides that, I'd also like to introduce you to a very important grammatical component, which is the list of upasargas or prefixes, and then I'll do an introduction to the Maheshwara Sutrani, also known as the Shiva Sutras, and there I will just introduce you to a Sandhi Sutra there. Besides that, of course, there will be some practice for the Dhatu Rupas, but in the context of the Sandhi, and of course in the process there will also be some attempt to add to your vocabulary. So, let's do a parichaya or introduction to the Swarasandhi and with some abhyasa or practice. So, here we go. What I thought of doing is, rather than presenting to you the answers of these combinations, I thought that we could try to derive them based on our own spoken experience of these sounds when they meet each other, when they encounter each other. So, before we go into this, I'd just like to present to you the table that is in front. So, we have here Purva Shabdasya Antima Varnaha. So, it's the last sound of the previous word, and then we have Para Shabdasya Prathama Varna. So, the first sound of the next word, and what happens is the combination or the sandhi. So, here because we are looking at swara sandhi, the last sound can be a potential vowel and the first sound has to be a vowel. So, let's do a combination here and see how it goes. So, I don't plan to introduce the entire chart in this manner due to want of time, but what we will do is I'll show you how it works and then we'll look at the entire thing together. So, then we have or a when it combines with another. So, if I say tatra asti, so what happens? So, say it aloud first. So, let's do it orally first. So, tatra asti, tatra asti, tatra asti, tatra asti. It will end up becoming tatrasti. So, let's see what happens. So, I have tatra plus asti. So, tra is a combination of tr plus a plus the vowel a plus sti there. That is also a combination, but for now that's not what we are concerned with. So, I am keeping it in its entirety. So, we have the and a. So, this is what we call the Swarasandhi, and here as you can see it will be 1 combining with 1, 1 combining with 2, etc., and then 2 combining with 1, and that is how we will have to fill up the table. So, what we will do is we have an and what happens? Yes, uttamam. So there's a lengthening of the vowel. But you can also have another word like balika, asti, and what happens there? So the a there becomes, stays an a. Or you can have balika agachati, in which case balika plus agachati, and what do you notice? That yes, there is no change, it remains as an a, uttamam. Alright, so I hope you are clear with that. So let's put that down there. So a or a combining with a will give us an a, combining with a it will still give us an a. And let's see what happens, whether this is the pattern with all the vowels when they combine with themselves. So we have an E and E followed by an E and E. So if you say asti iti, say that fast, asti iti asti 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 iti asti iti asti iti, it will become a long vowel. And the same we have with an u and an u. So what would happen? Uttamam, it becomes a long one. And then we have a r with a r, and what would happen very typically? Pitru rinam pitrinam. Okay, so that is a r, a long r. And then we have the a's and that combined with the a, but that's a diphthong and that's a different story. So we'll stop with this here, but I'd like to now show us how we can combine across vowels. So if you have an a or an a that is combining with an e, what happens then? So we have an a or an a combining with an e. So if you have the word Gana plus Isha, say that fast, Gana Isha Ganesha 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 becomes Ganesha. So you see it becomes an a. But what happens in the other case where you have an e followed by an a? So if you say Asti Atra, what happens there? So let's see, Asti. So sti is a combination of s plus t plus e, and then we have atra. Alright, so I'll just stick to this. So what happens to this part? So asti atra styatra, yes. So it becomes a y there. Alright, and therefore it will be s plus t plus y and then tra on that side. So astyatra, and I'll write that fully for you, astyatra. So that is what happens there. So here we get a y. If there's an asti arambhe, then it will become asthyarambhe. What happens if it's a v? If it's an u? So if you have u plus a, so if you have astu atra, then astvatra, uttamam, and a long sound. So now you can see how it will keep combining in this way to build it up. We also have the A's and the I, but now what I'll do is I will show you the whole chart itself. So as you can see there, we have the chart, we have all that we had figured out, just going at it, just trying to do it phonologically. And then another interesting thing is when we have the A's, so when we have the diphthongs combining, so we have the diphthong combining with an what happens? That he take a word like haste, asti, haste, asti, haste, asti, 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 haste, sti, uttamam. So haste, asti, so t plus a plus a, and what is it saying? It becomes an a with an avagra. But then if you have another one, for example, other than the if you have another one which is an a, so if you say haste agachati, say that fast and see what happens. Haste agachati, haste yagachati tends to become a ya there. So if you have haste t plus a plus a, so what it says is that this will tend to become a an I ya. Okay, hastaya gachati. So the a plus a becomes an aya. Uttamam. So if you have a word with an ending with an I like devyai and agacha, the next one starting with I. So what happens? It becomes either an aya, so devaya gachati. So I'll write that for you. Devyai plus agacha. So the yai plus I plus a, this becomes, this part of it becomes ya. So you get devyaya gachati. Alright, And then you can either have, so I'll write that out for you, Devya ya gachati, or you can also have Devya and then without putting a plus there, it's a standalone. You will say Devya agachati. But what you need to remember at this point is that if you see a word that is like that, like Devya agachati, it can be quite misleading because you have the tritiya of the Devi, which is Devya, and agachati, and you can think he is coming with the Devi. But contextually you have to understand that this is a sandhi for the Chaturthi or the dative of the Devi. So a lot of possibilities there, but you need to be alert. Sanskrit is all about alertness and awareness. Astu. And just I'd like you to draw your attention to the rest of the box here, and you see that when it is a when you have any of these combining with the vowels, it would tend to the A would tend to become the I and the I, the O and the Au would tend to become the Av and the Av, and then Av. So Aya and Av if it's with the but depending on the vowel it will take on that form. So if it's an A with a with an U, it will become a U. Alright, and similarly if it is a O with an Au with an E, it will become an V, etc., etc. So I'll leave this table for you to explore by yourselves. I hope you've got a feel of it though. Huh? Let's move on. So let's do some practice using the table, and here there are words. I'm not going to be emphasizing too much on the meaning here because I'm more keen that you try to catch the phonological relationship of the two words that are side by side. So we have the first one, which is rasa plus ayana. Rasa meaning the juices, etc. Ayana is the way of that. So how do they combine? So rasa, you put it together, rasa ayana, and it becomes rasayana. And just on the table you see a or a plus with the here, so that gives you an a. That's how you'd go about it. But what I would really recommend is that first you try to discover the sandhi by yourself, just phonologically, phonetically, and then you fall back on the table to complete it. So the other words that we have are Parama, Atma, Deva, Indra, Para, Upakara, Deva, Rishi, Tena, Eva, Mama, Autsukyam, Iti, Adi, Pitru, Adesha, Sarve, Eva, Bhumau, Upavishati. So some of them, not all of them, but try to give you some practice based on this table here for the Swarasandhi. So let's move on, and I'd like to introduce you to a very important component of any language, which are the prefixes or the upasargaha. So this is a verse on the upasargas by a Bengali grammarian in the 14th century, Padmanabha Datta, and the name of his grammar was known as Supadma Vyakarana. And so it goes like this. So I'm going to read it very slowly. I must confess I don't know the tune for it. So I'm just going to be reading it very slowly. So and then we will look at it in greater detail. So Praparapa samanvava nirdurabhi vyadhisudati nipratiparyapayah upa angiti vinshatiresha sakhe upasarga vidhi kathita kavina. Astu. So that was the first part of it. Now we are going to look at the breakup of the sound so that you can identify the different upasargas that are there. So pra, para, apa, sam, anu, ava, nir, dur, abhi, vi, adhi, su, ud, ati, ni, prati, pari, api, etc. Apayah meaning etc. Upa, ang, vimshatihi, esha. So vimshatihi, esha. Here they are saying that this is the vimshati, 20 of them. Sakhe, oh friend. Upasarga vidhihi. So upasarga vidhi, this way of the upasargas. Kathitaha kavina. So that's what the poet has said. And I must mention that in the Panini's Vyakarana you find two more. So atiriktau dvau upasargau. Beyond that there are two others which are nih and duh. So nih and duh can be alternative to the nir and dur also. So just a quick look at the meanings here. So pra means like in English pro, more. para is also beyond the idea of that. Upper can be away from, it gives that kind of a meaning. Sam, which means from all sides. Anu, which follows along, which follows behind. Ava means towards, down, going down, it has those senses. Nir, dur can mean without, without something. It can mean dur means also the bad, reject. Dur vyavastha, not good, bad in that sense. Bhi is more in the sense of more. Vi can mean either deeply into or away from. It can have both meanings. Adhi, on top of, more. Su means good. Ut, on top again. Ati, more. Ni means near. Generally it has like Upanishad, so it has the sense of nearness in it. Prati, again towards. Pari, around. Api also. And then uppa, near again. Ang can have different kinds of meaning. And vimshati rete and nis and sur we've seen has the sense of away from, etc., or bad, not so good. Alright, so that's the kind of meaning here. But the reason why I've also put it along with this particular series here is that because you can do some, there are words that have sandhis along with the upasarga. So I'll just take a small example. I'll just take one or two examples and to demonstrate that. So you have pari plus apta. Pari plus apta means to get. So pari plus apta would become paryapta. Paryapta. Paryapta means from all directions when you have got. So the word paryapta means enough. When is it enough? When you feel that you've got enough from all directions. So paryapta, etc. Then another one can be ava gacchati, but that means to understand. So gacchati, go towards, but ava is inside of you. Su agatam, that's another one that we look at and then we'll continue. So su plus agatam. Su means well or good, agatam means come. So su agatam becomes, su plus a becomes swagatam, which literally means welcome. Astu, paryapta was enough. There you are. Okay, so that's just to give you a taste of these upasargas, and using the upasargas, the meanings of words, the meanings of the dhatus or the verbs changes drastically, and you can really expand on your vocabulary if you know the meanings of these different upasargas. So let's move on. So let us look at the Maheshwara Sutrani, and it is on this sutra, these sutras, that Panini based his entire grammar of 4,000 sutras or so in his Ashtadhyayi. But there is an interesting story behind this. Aham tam katham Sanskrite shravayami. Astu, Panini bahu jijnyasu asit. He always wanted to learn things. Ekada saha dhyanamagnaha asit bhasha vishaye jnatum ichhati sma. Tada Shivaha prasannaha san tasya damaru nadam akarot. Kim akarot? Damaru nadam akarot. Tan shabdan asmakam paninihi shrutva vyakarana rupena athava varnamalayaha aksharani iva shrutva Maheshwara Sutranam rachanam akarot. So he heard the damaru sounds and formatted them in the guise of the Sanskrit Varnamala, and atra vayam tani drakshyama. So here goes. The first one is a I un rilrik e ong I ouch hayavarat lan nyammangananam jhabhain ghadadash jabbagadadash khapa chatata chatatav kapai shashasar hal. So you can feel the rhythm of that. In fact, on YouTube there's a clip of a scholar who's sounding the damaru and reciting the Maheshwara Sutrani, which you can try looking for. So this time I invite you to repeat after me. Astu. A I un rilrik e ong I ouch hayavarat lan nyamangananam jhabhain, gadhadash, khap jabgadadash, khapha chatha chatatav, kappai, shashasar, hal. Astu, bahu ruchiram asti. Astu. So now he used these sounds to format or to formulate his entire grammatical treatise known as the Ashtadhyayi. So how did he do it? I will give you one Sandhi rule to demonstrate how he utilized these letters. So there is a rule called Iko Yanachi. Iko Yan Achi. He created a meta language basically in order to present the entire Sanskrit grammar in 4000 rules. So Iko is actually Ikaha, there is already a Sandhi there, Yan, Achi. Achi here signifies, Achi here signifies the Saptami Vibhakti. So after an Ach, Saptami Vibhakti, okay. Like we've seen earlier on. So Ikaha Yan Achi. So what is Ikaha? It's the Panchami of Ik. So Ikaha, after Ik there is a Yan when it is followed by an. So it's Ikaha is of the Ik. It's can be the Panchami, but it's also the Shashti here, so the genitive. So of the Ik, it becomes the Yan. When does it become the Yan? When it is followed by an Ach. Now what do all the sounds mean? So what is an Ik? So what you have to do is to find the sounds in the Maheshwara Sutrani. So Ik. So what are the sounds in that? I, U, N, R, L, and K. K, right? So that is your Ik from there to there. But what he says is that the consonants that are indicating the end of the particular sutra should not be taken into consideration. Similarly, tell me which is the Yan now. So what are the Yan? So we have the Y and the N there. So what are the ones? Y, V, R, then you have a Ta, and then you have the L, and then you have the N. So again, you don't take the consonant into consideration. So what does he say? He says of the Ik, the Yan happens. When does the Yan happens? After an Ach. What is an Ach? So you start with the A and you go all the way up to the Ch. So can you make out what this group indicates? Uttamam. So the Ach signifies the vowels. So when an E is followed by a vowel, it will become a Y. So let's take the vowel A as an example. So E plus A becomes the Y, and that is exactly what we have seen in the practical exercise that we did earlier on. So E plus A. So for example, Asti, Atra becomes Astyatra. Okay, so the E and then A combining to form the Y there. So this is Iko Yan Achi. So you can see how in a very pithy manner, in a very brief manner, he is able to explain a lot of concepts there of how sounds combine with each other. Astu. So let's move on. So I thought instead of teaching you a new verse for this series, I'm going to just use the ones that we've already looked at and try to recognize how these sandhis are applied there. So this was that mantra from the Taittiriya Upanishad that we saw. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryang Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we had Sahana Vavatu, and we saw that this Na Vavatu is a combination of Nau plus Avatu, like you can see here. Saha, Nau, Avatu, the two of us. So now we are also familiar with the words and we are also familiar with the grammar. So it's a great moment to be able to do the sandhi correctly. Then saha now bhunaktu, so nourish us together. Saha viryang karavavahai uttamam tejasvinavadhitamastu. So here I had said tejasvinavadhitamastu, and if you break it up it becomes tejasvi now, and in my lesson I had said avadhitam astu, but I was wrong there because now becomes ava, and therefore it will not be avadhitam but adhitam. Alright, so tejasvi now adhitam astu, and ma vidvishavahai om shanti shanti shantihi. So I'd like to invite you to say it once after me. Om sahanavavatu sahanau bhunaktu sahaviryankaravavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om shanti shanti shanti. So let's move on. So I found this very interesting quote by an ancient Greek Neo-Pythagorean philosopher, orator and mathematician from the 1st century BCE, who says that his name was Apollonius of Tyana, and he says this comment about Indians. He says, "In India I found a race of mortals living upon the earth but not adhering to it, inhabiting cities but not being fixed to them, possessing everything but possessed by nothing." So I have purposely given the title of Vairagyam because Vairagya means this ability of remaining uncolored by what one is engaging with, and the English equivalent is detachment, but it has a slightly different shade, as you can see. So I think there's a lot of this can be owed to the content of several texts in Sanskrit. Moving on, some references for you. So I just wanted to add here that the tables that you're seeing are really taken from Narendra Arya's book, the Functional Sanskrit, its Communicative Aspects, and we're trying to get hold of that book, but it's not so easy, and but sincerely hope that we'll be able to help you with that. So saphalyamastu vaha, may success be yours. Sandhi adhyayane sanskritasya adhyayane avashyam जीवने च बहु साफल्यम अस्तु वहा.